So today with Airaid Media, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to create rap beats, hip hop beats, whatever you want to call them. Um, I'm not very much when it comes into genres at all, right? At all. I'm actually probably the worst guy to ask about genres, even though I'm a CEO of a record label, whatever, right? So the DAW or DAW that we're using today is Logic Pro X version 10.2. If you have 10.1, whatevs, work with it, whatever you can do. You know what I mean? But let's stop the jibber jabber. By the way, the beat that you see or the beat that you're going to hear today will be available on airaidmedia.com. Yeah. You can always reach out to us. The descriptions are below. Yeah. Contact at airaidmedia.com or preston.lambeth@airaidmedia.com. Yeah. Again, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on all that social stuff, right? So, without further ado, I think one thing that's imperative for us to talk about, first off, whenever you're making hip-hop beats, regardless of the DAW, regardless of whatever, right? The most important thing to talk about is song structure. So that's where we're going to get into really quick. All right. So let me minimize this here really quick. Right. To maximize viewing ability. Okay. Now, you'll notice how I have everything color coded. I don't do this when I track, when I'm tracking, right? Some people do. When I'm personally tracking, I don't like doing this, right? I just fucking record, right? I'm down here, hitting on the launch pad, mixing over here with an Ovation, playing on some keys, whatever. I'm not worried about colors. That's like the last thing that I'm worried about, okay? And you, YouTubers, should consider making it pretty after you get the track done, okay? All right, so let's begin. Obviously, the first thing in a song is the intro, okay? So I always color code my intro green. This helps me, right? So here, for example, we've got a 4-bar intro, okay? We've got a 16-bar verse. A transition or a bleed is what I call it. When I say bleed, it means that the verse literally bleeds into the chorus. The chorus I always color purple, not because I like purple, but because it sticks out for an artist. So us as producers, we always have to remember our job is to make the artist's life as easy as possible. Okay? That's our job. Yeah. So usually, it really honestly depends, right? You can have an 8-bar verse, you can have an 8-bar hook, you can have an 8-bar verse, you can have 2 8-bar hooks, which, 8 times 2 is 16, obviously. So you'll end up with actually a 16-bar verse, or excuse me, a 16-bar hook. For me, repeating the chorus twice in the song every 12 to 16 bars is too much. Yeah, you'll end up sounding like Katy Perry. Don't get me wrong. Much love to Katy Perry. You have a lot more money than I do. But at the end of the day, it's too repetitive, right? So I'll usually do a 16-bar verse, 4-bar bleed, 8-bar hook And then you'll notice how this matches the same color, right? So this is a bleed from the chorus into the verse, okay? 16-bar verse, 4-bar bleed, 8-bar hook. I've got something called a bridge. I have this one here set up at 8 bars, right? So this is a slightly different transition back into your chorus and your outro, or other people like to call it a repeater, okay? So usually at the end of the song, you're gonna hear 2 different variations of how the chorus goes, okay? So let's listen really quick to the intro, yeah? You're in your verse right now. You hear the bleed or the trans into the chorus. This shit is hot. Chorus. Okay. So now that you heard each one of these sections, right? Let's break it down. Okay. So me personally, and all of my recording staff and engineers and everybody that works with me with Airaid Media, we really like to make the fattest, dopest sound that you can come up with, either externally with analog equipment or internally in the box, right? So how do you take a drum track and make it sound dope as fuck in the box? And what you do is you basically double it up, right? So as you can see here around, right, we have a whole bunch of equipment. This is one remote studio, okay, that we're working with. We've got a full-blown 100% awesome studio, okay? That's just not here, right? So this is one of the remote locations. And pretty much if you look around, right, you've got your launch pad. Obviously, you've got the Mac. You've got the Novation keyboard. I've got a guitar over here. I've got some stuff on the wall. I don't know if you can see it up there on the wall. Monitors, etc., right? You don't need all that, right? In theory, nowadays, because Logic has gotten so awesome, you don't even need a MIDI controller to control all of your MIDI. So me personally, one of the things that I like to do is I like to double on the drums, okay? So when I talk about double on the drums, well, basically, you can use a whole bunch of preset drum kits with Logic. I personally, with this style of music, I like the low down dub kit, and then the Brooklyn kit from an acoustic standpoint, right? So if you hear it, if you listen to it, right, that sounds hot. Let's do that again, but let's get rid of the Brooklyn, and you'll just hear the low down, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the low down dub kit sounds solid by itself. You have to boost a few frequencies from an EQ perspective, but at the end of the day, it sounds solid. I personally like to make it a little bit more robust, if you will, and I like to add in that acoustic sound, boost up the room size just a little tiny bit, because then what it does is it really gives it a fuller spectrum. It makes the sound a little bit more colorful, etc. Right, so check it out without the Brooklyn. right? That's hot. I'm sure there's a bunch of you that could get down with this, right? So anyways, let's bring it back. Let's bring in the Brooklyn. And you'll notice, well, actually, let's just listen to the Brooklyn by itself. A little bit of cymbal color, right? Listen to that rim shot. That sounds nice, right? Now, let's listen to both of them together. Notice how the lower end and the spatial reverb, if you will, with the kick on the acoustic Brooklyn set, it just adds so much color on the lower end, and it really helps out from a production standpoint because your sound is so much fuller with it versus without it. Yeah. So let's add some bass, because obviously everybody knows at the end of the day, the bass riff on anything fills in that low end from 0 to 500 hertz, from 500 to 700 hertz. Depending on how you have the frequencies laid out or whatever, it's going to fill in that low end, even if you cut it off. Let's check this out. Let's listen to the bass riff. That's hot. So we've got our electronic drum kit. We've got our Brooklyn acoustic kit. We've got some bass. I've got some chords. I've got some trance. I've got whatever, right? Needless to say, this is all up to like your personal preference. We can open up another track and listen to the classic like boom bap type of beats with your piano, your drum set, orchestra, your horns, etc. But in this specific example, what I wanted to do is really just kind of show you how the track structure is, and just really honestly, at the end of the day, how to kick a beat out, right? So when you're using a Mac, right, you can either double click on the MIDI like this, okay? You'll notice how down here in the piano roll, it's going to bring up the notes, right, or the hits or the triggers. Or you can do Command 4, okay, and Command 4 will bring up the full screen view. I personally like Command 4 because I can get into the track a little bit more, see things. I don't have to worry about other shit, whatever. The only thing is, though, is that you have to have a beat selected when you do Command 4. Okay, so let's do it again. Command 4. And you can see here, we've got everything lined up. Yeah. So this beat is like super simplistic, right? If you just look at it, watch it. Very, very simplistic. Nothing super crazy going on. Whatever, right? So anyways, usually what I'll do is I'll kick off, like, from a drum beat perspective, I'll kick off a 4-bar beat. And then I'll usually do, an option drag. After you select your track, you hold option down, drag it, etc. Or you can add a new MIDI instrument or software instrument, click create, right? This will create your instrument, for example, and then you just bring in the Brooklyn kit, right? So you hit your library up here. You can also hit the L key, right? you basically you can do anything, right? You do drums, you go to acoustic, you go to Brooklyn, etc. Right? And then what I'll do is I'll drag my MIDI from low down. I'll option drag it down into Brooklyn, and then get rid of some things. I'll usually add some cymbals just to kind of put some more color on it. I personally think that cymbals add a lot of color, right? So I'll be here, on the launch pad. I'll be over here on the keyboard, doing all kinds of things, rocking it out, just adding some cymbal hits, whatever. Again, it's just about color and stuff, right? And at the end of the day, if your beat doesn't have any color, nobody's ever going to want to buy it, right? So, talking about color, let's go up to the shifting chords, right? I'm going to bring it back, close the library out, play it one time. So now you guys will kind of hear the shifting chords. You don't need to hear the intro again, so I'll just start it on the 5th bar. So what that does, the shifting chords adds a little bit more of higher shine, if you will, up in the EQ frequency from around 1200 to 1500, give or take. We're going to want to cut back some of those frequencies from an EQ perspective, right? Because at the end of the day, hip hop, what a lot of people do incorrectly is they don't EQ their shit. So everything comes out sounding like, I don't know, banging on a paper plate or a plastic plate with some drumsticks, and the EQ is just like super high. And frankly, it sounds like shit, right? So I like that a little bit of higher volume higher frequency from an EQ perspective. Let's drop in the anthem chord out here, right? So you'll kind of hear how the chorus differs from the verse. Right? Drop in the anthem. Now, for me, that sounds hot, right? So one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't do in hip-hop beats is they don't properly transition from the verse into the chorus, right? So what I like to do, even just some little subtle things, right? If you look here at the acoustic kit, just a few snare rolls. Let me solo this out here really quick. Hold on. Get rid of this stuff. Right. Just listen to this last little section, right? The last bar of the trance. Right? With the Brooklyn kit enabled. Now, those little tiny colors that you add into the track, at the end of the day, after you mix it, post-production, pre-production, pre-mastering, blah, 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 that shit will add so much feel and so much emotion and actually allow people to flow with the music from one section to another. And that is so huge, right? One of the biggest things that I hate right now about music is that people are not remembering that music has to take you from one place to another slowly, beautifully, not quickly and violently. You're telling a story. If your hairs on your arms don't stand up when you listen to the track, fucking do it again. Do it again and again and again until your hair stands up on your arms and you get goosebumps. If you're not doing that shit, dude, there's not going to be another single person out there that's listening to your shit that even feels it. So if you don't feel it, nobody else is going to, right? So hear this out right quick again. Listen to just a little tiny snares, yeah? Right? That little bit of color, these notes right here, add so much to the feel of that song and the transitional value. It's insane. right? So let's listen to it. Let's listen to it all together. Yeah. And that just transitions so nicely, right, into the chorus. Now, same rule applies when you're transitioning from the chorus or the hook back into the verse. It's huge, right? So let's take a listen to this. I'll catch you 2 bars back, right? 1 bar is the end of the chorus. You have 1 bar of transition, and you get into the chorus, or excuse me, the verse. Now, for everybody out there with their listening goggles on, yeah, listening goggles, you'll hear the last few snare hits, right? Just listen to it again. And again, that little tiny bit of color is huge when it comes into song production, right? So, same stuff. We took this a little bit from a little bit of a different route because, again, you don't just want to do like verse, transition, chorus, transition, verse, transition, chorus. You want to flip it up a little bit because at the end of the day, nobody wants to hear the same shit over and over and again, right? So we always like to switch it up a little bit from a notes and a color perspective. So listen to this transition. Right, that's pretty hot. So same shit here, and then you'll notice that this transition back into the bridge is slightly different than the transition that we heard here. So you can see how empty this is. A couple kicks, a hi-hat, a few snare rolls. Back over here, notice the difference. Right? So you've got some cymbal hits, some toms, some kick, and you've got what I call a grinding riff. So let's take it back a note. Yeah. Now you're in the bridge. I personally really dig this bridge. Very full color spectrum. From an EQ perspective, it's really easy to handle it. And this is all raw. This is not even close to being done. And it just sounds amazing. Take it back, transition into the chorus. Right? And again, essentially your outro and your repeater is basically the same stuff. We added some color with a grinding riff and some acoustic drums. Notice how it's just a slightly closed tempered hi-hat. Sounds really nice transitioning into the outro or the repeater, right? And that's it, man. It's really that easy, right? I'm not going to get into, what I did or all these other things, etc. But at the end of the day, just kind of wanted to give you a basic structure on how to create a hip-hop beat. And here you go. So don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the extra comments down at the bottom. Let me know what you think. Let us know what you think. Don't forget to hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that other good stuff. Airaid Media at everything. Or in order to reach out to us, contact@airaidmedia.com. Thanks again, and we'll definitely be talking to you soon.